and girls, babies in your diapers. Welcome to the Tiberius Show with your host, Tiberius Boy.
That's me, Tiberius. Today, we're going to talk about some very awesome stuff. We have an interesting video game to talk about, a book about squirrels, my bone squirrel report, and we got a totally awesome guest. The one, the amazing Mark Pellegrini. Mark is a big-time board game player and holds super large board game parties.
Hello, Tiberius. I'm glad to be here.
Today, we're going to start off with the video game of the week, and this is going to be a quest.
And now it's time for the video game of the week.
Today's video game is Guess the Harbor Dungeon Quest. So this is a game on a Roblox platform. It was made by V Cafe. Because it is on Roblox, you are able to play it on PC, Mac, Xbox, and even your cell phone. And it is free. This looks to be his first game. Oh, wow! It sets a tone. So in this game, we start off being offered a tutorial. The scene is very attractive and detailed for a Roblox game. It kind of looks like a scene from World of Warcraft. As you look around, there are tons of people walking around, throwing their spells around. You can upgrade your spell power, physical power, or health. Then you can join a dungeon. Now you are able to fight monsters with your friends, and you have to defeat each of the monsters in a room before you can go into the next room. After you finish all the rooms, you get to fight the boss. Then you get loot. Your loot depends on how hard the dungeon was and if you played hardcore. So that means if you die just once, you get nothing and you don't respawn. The loot you can sell or equip, and you can even upgrade them with coins. I give Ghastly Harbor Dungeon Quest 10 out of 10 stars because it's a very fun game and the graphics are really good for a Roblox game. This game really does a good job of offering VIP modes and weapons that are fun to upgrade and advance with. All gamers that enjoy exploring should play this game. See David Smith, Law.com.
You can call him at 407-801-2667.
Wait, you are not Chuck.
My dad can help when people get hurt. He loves to help people.
If you are ever injured at work or in a car accident, you should call my friend Chuck.
You can call him at 407-801-2667.
The website again is cwsmithlaw.com.
Offices, Orlando.
Does it actually have that much W's?
For 40 years, Lighthouse Central Florida has provided education, independent life skills, and job training to thousands of Central Floridians who live with blindness or any degree of vision loss. Whether it's picking out clothes in the morning or just moving around your community and serving Orange, Seminole, and Osceola counties, contact Lighthouse Central Florida at 407-898-2483 or visit them online at lighthousecfl.org.
Quick shout out to one of our sponsors over at the Quality Suites. They have a phenomenal Halloween Horror Nights package with a 2-night stay at the Quality Suites on 7400 Canada Ave. You can actually get a $50 gift card at Universal Halloween Horror Nights, free breakfast and free Wi-Fi, and you'll only be 7 minutes away from the park. All this for just $279 plus tax. You cannot beat this, guy, so give them a call at 1-877-457-8444. That's 1-877-457-8444.
And now it's time for the book of the week! Getting to know nature's treasured squirrels! This book is written by George Peck. Let me read you the back of the book. In fact, Mark, would you want to do the honors?
Everything you ever wanted to know about squirrels. This book describes the physical characteristics, habits, and habitats of tree squirrels.
So first off, this is an error book and is worth 5 points or half a point. It's made for 5th grade and 5th month. This is a great series about everything nature. This is an old book series, so they may be hard to find. Okay, so this is not like my normal books. This is not fiction. Instead, this is more of a resource book, kind of like a dictionary, but instead, it's all about squirrels. So, if you wanted to know anything about squirrels, this is the book to read. For example, I learned that squirrels are normally founded in wooded areas, and they have a diet of nuts, flowers, berries, and if they are hungry, they even eat bird eggs and snails. They nest in tree holes, and they are very active during the daytime. They also gather a large food supply in the fall. And now I won't tell you everything, but this is a great resource if you want to know why gray squirrels prefer the city and how far a squirrel could travel away from home, or even what squirrels use that big tail for. You get to learn about squirrel enemies and how they crack the nuts they find. I give Getting to Know Nature's Children Squirrels 9 out of 10 stars because I enjoyed learning everything that I ever wanted to know about squirrels. And I know that I won't look at another squirrel the same when I see one. I really liked how squirrels can jump large distances using their tail like a rudder. Squirrel! The Tiberius Show would like to thank one of our awesome sponsors, SludgeChannelUS.com. These guys are very, very cool. They bring 21st century surface drainage solutions to reality. They can do corporate and government work. These are the guys that make roads and bridges safe in the rain. You can see all about them at SludgeChannelUS.com. That website again is SludgeChannelUS.com. The Tiberius Show would like to thank one of our dedicated sponsors, Custom Designs Orlando. These guys are on Mills Avenue and do all sorts of stuff, ranging from photo ID badges, engraved signs, custom Braille ADA signs, vinyl lettering, to trophies and awards. They can ship products all over the United States. You can reach them at 407-898-0373. And now it's time for an interview of an interesting person. Today's guest is going to be so much fun. Today, we have the one, the only, the amazing Mark Pellegrini. Mark is the host of the board game parties that I like to go to, and the guy that taught me how to play the game Acquire.
Thank you, Tiberius. I'm glad that I could teach you a game like Acquire.
Hey, so, first off, how are you enjoying being on the show?
Oh, this is great. Anytime that I can come out and spread the love of playing board games. You know, a lot of people don't realize that there's more out there than just Monopoly.
Yeah. So I know you because you love board games and taught me a number of them. But what do you do for a real job?
I work in supercomputing. I built and run the supercomputers that the government uses to predict weather, specifically hurricanes.
So really, what does a supercomputer do? And what makes them super?
They're super because they're large. There's nothing fundamentally different between the computers that I work on and the one that sits on your desktop, except the one that I work on is about 1,000, 10,000 times larger.
Okay. So do you work on more than one supercomputer?
Yes. I work on one locally here in Orlando, and the other half of my team runs the one that is in Reston, Virginia, and I can work on that one remotely over the internet.
Okay, so what is the best part about working on supercomputers?
For me, the most fulfilling part of my job is knowing that the work I do saves lives, that the decisions that are... When we have a hurricane model that comes out and says, where is this hurricane going? They make literally life and death decisions based on those forecasts. Where do you evacuate? Where do you not evacuate? So I find that to be, you know, I know that I'm making a difference with what I do in my career.
Okay, because it's a supercomputer, does it need a cape?
Oh. A cape. No, unfortunately, no capes. They do have pretty little door decorations.
Okay, so what is the hardest part about supercomputers?
The hardest part of supercomputers, I would say, is they're very complex systems that, and when something is not running the way it should, figuring out what exactly is going wrong can be very difficult. Some people, that they spend their entire career just learning to diagnose supercomputing problems.
Okay, so when you say you are working on supercomputers, what does that really mean?
That means that I helped build them when they originally went online. That means that they have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of parts. When things go bad over time, as computer equipment tends to do, I replace the parts that go bad. As far as software, I wrote the software that runs periodically on the system and makes sure that everything is running like it should. When our users have problems, they report them, and then me or a member of my team will help them work through what's going on, what happened, and how they can avoid the problem in the future.
Wow. So, how did you get into board games?
Well, when I was young, of course, we had all the games that most people tend to think of when they think of board gaming: Monopoly and Sorry and Life. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, I bought a used board game called Fortress America, and it was the first board game that I really owned. It's this wonderful little old war game, basically the Red Dawn the board game, where America is invaded by the Russians, and you have to kick them out. And it's a fun game. It was actually reprinted about 5 or 10 years ago, and they polished it up a little bit, made it a little more modern. And that was the first real board game that I owned.
Wow. So did your family do a family night to play board games with you?
No. My family were not then and not now board gamers. I've managed to introduce a few, particularly my brother. I've managed to get them a little bit into some games that I knew they would like, but generally no. What did it for me was when I went to live in New Mexico and I was working at Los Alamos Laboratory. That city is very isolated, and so they have developed a very strong board gaming culture. And when I was out there, I met the board gamers that were there, and they're really hardcore, and they really introduced me to modern board gaming.
So if no one would play board games with you, how did you play?
There are some games that are amenable to solo play. You can play them by yourself, and they work reasonably well that way. And there were a number of games that I played that way. And then once I got to college, I could actually show all the friends that I was living with in the dorm. I could show them these games, and then that really, that kind of was like flicking a switch.
So what is the hardest board game that you have ever played?
So there are two ways to answer that question. What's the hardest board game to learn? And that is a board game called Federation and Empire. It has a instruction manual that is about 250 pages long. I spent 3 or 4 days trying to, every night, hours each night trying to read this thing, and eventually I was like, this is it. I can't do it. I'm giving up. It's the one board game I ever tried to learn and just gave up on. It's too complicated. As far as playing, I actually have a little bit of show and tell. I brought a game called Bamboleo, and this is what's called a dexterity game. Dexterity games involve some kind of small physical feat where you have to, flick a little piece of plastic or wood, or you have to balance things. In Bamboleo, you have a cylinder with a cork ball on top, onto which you balance a wooden disc about the size of a dinner plate, and then on top of that you put wooden blocks. And you go around the table, and on their turn, each player has to take one wooden block off this without knocking the whole thing over. It's like Jenga, but much, much more difficult. We laugh because my wife has played about 7 or 8 times, and she has never successfully scored a single point. She knocks it over every time she touches it.
Wow. How about the most boring one?
The most boring game I have ever played is Candyland. And the reason I say Candyland is because I would argue it's not even really a board game, because the player never actually makes a choice in the entire game. You shuffle, and then the outcome is determined at that point. There's no choice after that. So as far as boring, in any game where you have nothing to do, I would call boring. When you talk about board games, you can talk about theme or mechanics. Theme is, does it tell a story? And there are some really, really good thematic games out there. Life actually has a reasonably decent theme. But the mechanics are terrible, because there's really not a lot as far as player choice or analysis, thinking about the game that you have to do. There's I was thinking recently about, there's a game coming out called Nemesis. It's the best thematic game I have ever played. It's if you were to drop somebody in the middle of the movie Alien, because you're running around with you have a team of people on a ship, and you have these really, really scary aliens that are popping out all the time, and it's just you can like picture the story in your head as you're playing this game, and so that it's actually coming out in retail next month, and I think it's the best co-op game I've ever played. A game that you want to play with other people that you're cooperating with.
Okay. So, when is your next board game party?
I tend to do about 3 a year on holidays. So, one on or around Memorial Day, one on or around Labor Day, and then another one around Christmas.
Okay. So, which board game do you think I should learn next?
Sorry, that's there's so many to choose from.
Well, I know.
I think that you would probably enjoy. There's a game called Istanbul. It's about medium complexity, and your goal is to. I think you have to get to 8 jewels, and whoever gets to 8 jewels first wins the game. And the way it works is you have essentially a stack of family members, little discs, and you move around the board, and every time you go to a place, you drop a family member off. Or you can move back to a place you've already been and collect your family member. But you can't go to some place unless you either are collecting or dropping off a family member. So it's a resource management movement game, but you have to think because you're very limited in where you can go.
Okay. So, what advice would you give my listeners if they wanted to start a collection of board games?
So, there are games that people call gateway games that are easy for non-gamers to pick up and start playing, and they act as sort of a gateway into the rest of the hobby. Probably the most famous gateway game is called Settlers of Catan. It's probably about 25 years old now. That was probably the first one, the one that a lot of people picked up and realized, oh man, there's board games outside of Monopoly? Since that has come out, there's been a few others that a lot of people would point to. There's one called Carcassonne. Another one is called Splendor. The one that, if I had to point my finger at it and say this is the one that I think has the widest appeal, is one of my favorites. It's called Wits and Wagers. It's a trivia game, but with a twist in that every answer is a number. The correct answer is the one that is closest without going over, and you get a few points for being the one who is the most correct, but you get the most. You get the majority of your points come from betting on which answers you think are correct. So everyone writes their answers. You put them out. The median value has the lowest payoff. The ones that are furthest from the median value have the highest payoff, and then you bet on the ones that you think are correct. So even if you know nothing about trivia, if you can bet well, you can do very well in this game.
Oh wait, back to work for a minute. So what advice would you give them if they wanted to learn and work on supercomputers?
Supercomputing has a much higher barrier to entry than board gaming. Not quite nearly as easy to pick up. For me, I got into it by getting a degree in computer engineering. For other people, probably the easiest way to start to get into it would be to start picking up a programming language of some kind. And then once you once you have mastered the basics, there is a concept called concurrency, which is doing multiple things at once. Okay. Which is how a supercomputer works. You take a problem, you split it up into multiple parts, and you work on all of them at once.
Okay, that's cool. What is the operating system of the supercomputers?
Almost all of them run some version of Linux. The one that I work on specifically runs SUSE Linux version 11.
Okay. What is the biggest mistake you've ever made? And how did it change you as a person?
I had originally gone to graduate school, and after being there for 7 years, I decided to walk away, and so I decided academia was not for me. And I think that personally, that taught me the value of not wasting your time. Of sometimes when you decide that you kind of gone down the wrong path, that you need to cut your losses and kind of get away from that.
Okay. So now can you tell me that one story? Remember, this is a kid show. But that one story, well, that you're not supposed to tell me about. Come on.
So, there is a board game out there called Shadowhunters. And at the beginning of the game, everyone is dealt a card, which tells you if you're a shadow or a hunter. Or there's a small number of people who are neither, they're neutrals. And if you essentially divide equally. So if you have 7 players, you'll have 3 shadows, 3 hunters, and a neutral. If you have 6, you'll do 3 and 3. Well, one time we had about 7 or 8 people, and I was setting up the game, and I very, very secretly and quietly made everybody a shadow. So we started playing, and everyone would, figure out, oh, you're a shadow, everyone else must be hunters, and just start wailing on everybody. And so you had people who were getting attacked by people, they're like, why are you attacking me? Knowing the other player was a shadow. And eventually, about 15 or 20 minutes later, everyone realized what had happened, and I almost fell out of my chair laughing. And some people took it in good stride, and they thought it was just the funniest prank ever. And some people were just like shell-shocked. They couldn't believe what had happened. And my wife, at the time my girlfriend, she was so frustrated with me because she had gotten so upset about people attacking her knowing they were on her team.
Wow. Okay, so do you play video games? What's your favorite one?
I do. I mostly PC, and I used to play consoles, not so much nowadays. By number of hours, I think on Steam, the most I've played is Stellaris. Also in my top 5, I would probably say are Skyrim and Fallout.
Skyrim. Okay, so what is the one question that you think I forgot to ask you?
You never asked me where I work, Tiberius.
So where do you work?
So, until about 2 weeks ago, I worked for a company called Cray, and they got bought at the end of September by a company called HPE. And I work at a data center here in Orlando I'm a subcontractor for NOAA, the U.S. government weather service.
Okay. So what does NOAA stand for?
The National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration.
Ooh. Thank you, Mark, for being my special guest. Can you stick around for Math Corners?
Yes, of course.
Mid-State Fire has been providing top-quality fire equipment services for 3 generations to the Central Florida area. Don't wait for an emergency to repair. Call Mid-State Fire today at 407-246-8855. Get your fire extinguishers and emergency lighting for both your home and businesses by visiting www.midstatefire.com. That number again is 407-246-8855. The Tiberius Show would like to thank Boggy Creek Airboat Adventures for being one of our sponsors. I got to go on an airboat and saw a real gator. I even got to go to the gem mine and mine for some gems. We ate a steak dinner at the restaurant and even got some gator bites. If you want to have a blast with the entire family, I suggest you go to www.bcairboats.com right now. Get your tickets today. The website again is bcairboats.com. Oak Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service, and firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at OakRidgeGunRange.com.
Get ready, it's time for the Bowling Score Report!
Okay, so guess what? I did get to go bowling, and I got a 118, a 117, and a 75 in the final game. Because my series was over 300, I got to play Hyperdeck with my mom. I did 4 games, and I got a high score of 14,500 points. So, if you want to go bowling with me, be sure to drink me the new Fall League Up Boardwalk Bowling Saturdays at 10 a.m. in the morning, bro.
Tiberius' favorite subject, it's Math Corners!
Thank you so much, Mark, for helping me with Math Corners. Today, we're going to talk about dividing an object into 6 1/8. So I've been doing my IXL.com math exercises, and we got into making 6 1/8. So they provide me a geometric shape, and I have to divide it into either 6 or 8, but I have to do it evenly. So first off, how you approach this is determined by what the shape is. If it is a circle, you just draw the lines linking the points of a hexagon or an octagon. But if the object is a square or a rectangle, then you have to determine the size to make your slices. If you divide the shape into thirds vertically and then in half horizontally, then you have made the 6th. If you divide the shape in half and then half again vertically, then half horizontally, then you have made the 8th. Each of the divided objects will be rectangles. You can also use an octagon cut to divide a regular square into 8ths. If you do it this way, then you have the number of triangles as the divided objects. It is important that you ensure each of the divided objects are even or an equal size and shape to each other. So Mark, do you now know all about how to divide an object into 6 1/8?
Yes, I do. If you have a bunch of friends coming over and you have ordered pizza, you have to know how to cut it.
Thank you so much, Mark, for your help with Math Corners.
I'm glad to be here, Tiberius. Thank you for having me.
And now it's time for the Heart of a Lion. As you know, we talk about the qualities of living by the Heart of a Lion. It stands for leadership, integrity, obedience, and ability. This week, we're going to talk about obedience. For me, I think obedience is being fully committed to doing what is pleasing to God. The qualities of obedience are compliance with a good attitude and respect for the laws. You know when someone is obedient when they follow instructions willingly and truly. So I picked obedience because I've been working on following all instructions with a smile on my face. I get all my homework done, and I've been obeying my mom and my dad, as well as my math teacher, and practicing my IXL, even when no one else is watching. So Mark, did you see or use obedience at all this week?
Yes. When I had a friend over last night, we were playing a board game that was not all that familiar to either of us, so it's important to follow the rules, and if you're not sure, to look them up to find out what you're supposed to do.
Of all of the Heart of the Lion virtues, which is your favorite?
I would say integrity. Telling people, being honest with people and being truthful, telling them even when it's an uncomfortable truth.
That's great. You should always try and be lion strong in everything we do. And that's our show, folks. I want to thank the one, the only, the amazing Mark Pellegrini for being my special guest this week. It has been so much fun talking with you today, and I look forward to your next board game party.
Thank you for having me, Tiberius. I'm glad to be here.
You're welcome. And be sure to listen to us next week on the Tiberius Show. Your host, Tiberius Boy!
The Tiberius Show is not filmed in front of a live studio audience. Executive producer, Joseph Boyd. Production editor, Pierre Laguerre. Green Room manager, Danny Boyd. Broadcast associate, James Smith. And your program host, Tiberius Boy. The Tiberius Show is copyright 2018.